Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County Forum for candidates for Legislative District 12, positions 1 and 2. I'm Nadine Shanti, and I am a member of the League. This forum is being live streamed to our League YouTube channel. To those in the virtual space, thank you for joining us. Let me provide some background on the position of the Washington State Representative. Members of the legislature enact or reject legislation affecting public policy in the state, provide for the levy and collection of taxes and other revenue to support state government and assist local government, and appropriate funds for these purposes. The House is made up of 98 members, 2 from each legislative district in the state. The total membership of the House is up for election each even-numbered year. This is a partisan office, and candidates may declare a party affiliation. Legislative District 12 runs east and west across the Cascade Range. It includes the Snohomish County cities of Monroe, Salton, Gold Bar, and Index. Candidates for Legislative District 12, Position 1 are Brian Burnett and Heather Koellen. Candidates for Legislative District 12, Position 2 are Daniel Scott and Mike Steele. It is the policy of the League to be nonpartisan. Therefore, we neither endorse nor oppose candidates or parties. The rules for participation in this forum were sent ahead of time to all candidates, and they have agreed to follow them. I will pose the questions and will clearly state the amount of time allowed for each answer. We are using a countdown timer visible to all candidates, and time limits will be strictly enforced. The order for the first question was determined at random before the forum and will be Heather Koellen, Brian Burnett, Mike Steele, then Daniel Scott. I will alternate candidates in the starting spot for each legislative position. Let's begin. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to this first question. And Ms. Koellen, that question is, what are the major issues you feel need to be addressed by this office? Please explain why you are focusing on these issues.
Thank you for that question. The major issues, I think, for your office are women's reproductive health rights, child care issues, and basically protecting women in all forms, jobs, daycare, maternal health, everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett, the same question.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Obviously, public safety, and I'm going to wrap public safety in that. Really, that includes dangerous drugs, mental health crisis, and our homelessness, the issues that we're dealing with there. And sometimes those intertwine together. I know at some of the questions coming up, we're going to touch a little more, but also transportation is a big one. We have some corridors that are needing some real attention and restoration projects around our state to make sure that we are operating and moving commerce good, but also our people that commute to work and then recreate as well. And then obviously education is always a big piece. And then I'm going to end up with small businesses, supporting our small businesses because they're the heart of our economy.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, you're up. Do I need to repeat the question?
No, thanks, Nadine. Thank you so much to the League for having us all this evening. As was stated, I'm Mike Steele. I'm currently seeking my 5th term in the House of Representatives. I serve as the Deputy Minority Leader, and over the years, I've held a series of ranking positions and can continue to hold a ranking position on the capital budget. I was the ranking member of the K-12 education budget, served on the Appropriations Committee, and several others. And so for me, this is a continuation of the work that I've been doing, and think there are incredible issues that we continue to tackle as a state. And some have been mentioned, but I think for me, some of the most crucial are public safety, the K-12 education system, and of course, mental and behavioral health. Those are the three sort of key issues that I've been working on over my time. And I'm really proud of the accomplishments that we've made in my time in the legislature, including for the first time ever, building a new teaching hospital in partnership with the University of Washington to do teaching for mental and behavioral health specialists. We really have a pipeline issue, trying to get folks into that pipeline to serve those folks who are in most need. That's incredibly important. Reform in the K-12 education system is an ongoing effort. I was proud to be a sponsor of new graduation pathways. We'll continue to work on that. And of course, public safety. The legislature has done a lot over the years that I've been there to make criminals less accountable. And I think we need to get back on track. We need to make sure that as folks are committing these crimes in our communities, we are doing everything at the state level to make sure there are consequences to the actions these folks are involved in. So thank you so much again to the League. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, same question.
Yes, thank you, Nadine, for having us and the League of Women Voters for having us candidates tonight. I've really got see three priorities for the district and for the state actually. And the first one is schools and education. You heard the other candidates talk about that here, that our education system is very important to our state and our system. Approximately 44% of the state budget goes to the education system. So it's a big dollar item. It needs a lot of attention. And that's something we can all work on depending on, doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. Same with public safety. You heard that also from the other candidates. And public safety, I take pretty broadly. It's not just police and jails. It's also mental health. It's also our roads. Our roads are part of public safety, and they need properly paid attention to as well. But all that needs to be on the back of a strong economy. We need a strong economy because we need good government, good jobs, and good paying jobs. And the government should foster an environment where private enterprises can be successful. Because if private enterprises are successful, there's going to be more jobs, better paying jobs, and even things like stock options. We're really seeing Microsoft and Amazon type stock options really helping to drive the state economy right now.
Thank you. For our second question, we'd like to start with you, Mr. Scott. So stay unmuted. What qualifications and experiences make you a good choice to address these major issues?
Well, yes, thanks, Nadine. So just for a little bit of background about me, I do have a little bit of public service experience, and I was on the Kashmir City Council here in Chelan County. I've left the council when we moved out of the city limits. We just moved a couple miles out, but I still consider Kashmir my community. I grew up in Kashmir. I grew up in Chelan County. I was born on the west side. I was born over in Everett, so I was born over there on the west side of the district. I think it's probably a familiar story. My dad worked for Boeing. My family lived there, so that's where I was born. But I also graduated from the public school system. I graduated from Kashmir High School, Wenatchee Valley College, and I earned a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering from Washington State University. So I've got deep roots and deep ties into the community, as well as public service, such as my Kashmir City Council time and other things I've been involved in over the years.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, same question.
Thank you, Nadine. As mentioned, I'm seeking my fifth term in the House of Representatives. But before I was elected to serve in the House of Representatives, I did 2 terms on the City Council in Chelan. I continue to serve as the Executive Director of the Lake Chelan Chamber of Commerce. And so all of those things sort of serve me as my lens as I see things in policy in Olympia. But there's much more to do. I think having grown up, born and raised in Chelan County, my family's been here 6 generations, 140 years. I've already served a term in this new district, so representing this part of Snohomish County and King, along with Chelan County. So I'm really proud of that work. My colleagues elected me as the Deputy Minority Leader, and so they see me as a leader, someone who can work across the aisle and who is suited to guide them in policy work. And I'm proud of the policy work that I've done, having served as ranking member, meaning the highest ranking Republican on several committees related to policy that directly affect our district. And so I'm proud of that. And again, having served this number of terms in the House has prepared me uniquely to continue to serve as I've built those relationships. And I'm certainly proud of those relationships that I built across the aisle because politics is about the art of negotiation and working with your colleagues in the state legislature to convince them on what might be good public policy. So again, thankful for the time and the privilege to serve, and I look forward to doing that further.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett.
Yes, thank you, Nadine. Yes, I just completed a 25-year career in law enforcement. I retired from as the elected sheriff of Chelan County. I did 12 years, 3 terms. I retired from that position in January of 23. I'm the current director of law enforcement services for a private security company called Seattle's Finest, where we hire off-duty police officers to work security positions. I'm also a current Washington State Sheriff's Administrative Liaison. I'm a past president for the Washington State Sheriff's Association. So I work directly with the executive board from the Sheriff's Association on policy issues and different things for our members as their communicator and a collaborator. I am also the past president of the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs and spent multiple time on different co-chairs from the Wellness and Resilience Committee to the Sex Offender Policy Registration Notification System. I'm also a past commissioner for the Criminal Justice Training Commission, where I was appointed by Governor Inslee to fill the 1 of 2 elected sheriff's position within that. And I served in that position from October of 2018 to June 30th of 2021, where House Bill 5051 changed the composition of the commission and eliminated one of the sheriff positions. But just working really closely. As my time as sheriff, we worked a co-response team for mental health.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Ms. Koellen, your qualifications and experience, please.
Thank you, Nadine. So as an ICU nurse at Harborview Medical Center, I see firsthand every day the issues that we face in Washington State. And these would include mental health, drug dependency, and lack of health care, as well as gun violence. As a North Bend City Council member on my 2nd term, I see more of the same, but on a smaller scale without any of the resources that the bigger cities get. So I think this will give me a perspective as a legislator and to see in the bigger picture, small town versus big town and all the major needs that we're facing. Thank you.
And thank you. Timer, please note that the candidates will have 60 seconds for this next string of questions. Please adjust the clock. Ms. Koellen, we'd like to start with you. This legislative session will enact the 2025-2027 biennial budget. If elected, what would be your funding priorities?
Well, there's so many, right? So many priorities. I think affordability is a huge problem for everybody nationwide, but especially Washington State. And this includes housing, food costs, gas costs. So anything that we can do to help the average citizen to be able to have a life that they can afford would be huge on my list.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Also mental health.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Burnett, your funding priorities? Mr. Burnett, are you frozen? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask Mr. Steele, could you please answer the question and then we'll see if we can get him back. Thank you.
Certainly. Thanks, Nadine. As has been mentioned, I think as we look at those major issues across the state, we're going to continue to need to fund those issues. So education, I've been in contact with multiple school districts across my legislative district. We're facing enrollment shortfalls across Washington, not just here in my district, but all over the state. So the state will have to address those enrollment shortfalls because, as everyone understands, apportionment dollars from the state are handed out through enrollment. And so we're going to have to address that. Mental and behavioral health, in my short time in the legislature in the last decade, we've generated and directed almost $1 billion in funding to mental and behavioral health. And I certainly think that that is a major priority and should continue to be a major priority Housing. We've done more than $1 billion in affordable housing and homelessness across Washington. One of the things that I'll be looking at very critically as we build our budgets in the 25-27 biennium is that money working? I think we also have to ask ourselves that question as taxpayers have entrusted us to spend this money wisely and efficiently. We have to make sure we're spending that money appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, same question. Do I need to repeat it?
No, I've got the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, I'd say that we need to look at the existing budget and use that as a framework and a roadmap for the next biennium budget. You know, and the big ticket items are education and public safety. By far, that's the hands down the vast majority of the state budget is within those two categories. And so I think that we need to look within those categories about how to most efficiently use the funding that we have and how that we can both help people, both students and in public safety environment with the funding that we have. You know, people have talked about affordability and the high cost of things. You know, but that's not really where the state spends a lot of money at. So it should not be a big focus. Not that those things aren't important, but the big focus for the budget needs to be on education and public safety.
Thank you so much. I think we don't have Mr. Burnett yet, so I'm going to proceed to the fourth question. And I would like to start with Mr. Scott. What actions would you take or what policies would you endorse, if any, to address homelessness in your district?
Well, homelessness is a huge topic, and there's lots of reasons people are homeless. Everything from housing affordability, which seems to come up a lot. But in the experience I have out there with the homeless community, most of those people do not want to take the services. They want to keep doing what they're doing, and most of that is drug abuse, alcohol abuse. A lot of these, there's mental issues, and they don't want to be treated. They don't want to take the mental issue drugs. And we need to figure out how to help those people because that's the bulk of the homeless problems. And we've heard from some of the other candidates how the state is trying to train up new people, the mental health people to help with that. And we need to enact some laws and rules that help the people that are out there on the front line dealing with the homelessness issues and the mental health issues, how we can empower those people to help them when they're out there on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you so much. Mr. Steele, same question.
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned in the previous question, we have done a lot to address homelessness in Washington State, including spending almost $1 billion in new money to address homelessness and housing. And honestly, it's not just a money issue. As I've witnessed in my time in service in the legislature, dumping tons of money into one singular issue or policy area is not a solution. And so one of the things that I continue to push and continue to promote is a wraparound idea, a wraparound set of services that get these folks who are experiencing homelessness involved in services that they need so that we can address addiction issues, so that we can address mental and behavioral health issues, and so that we can get them into stable housing, so we can get them even to a stable shelter, because those are first steps in achieving a healthy person and in getting them back involved and engaged in our community. And so unless you're doing all of those things with those wraparound services, finding simply shelter or addressing only one side of that equation is not going to solve our problem. So I think policies have to be interrelated, mental and behavioral health, along with finding solutions for shelter and homelessness. So I will continue to promote those as agenda items for myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. We're working to get Mr. Burnett back in, but he is having internet issues. So Ms. Koellen, could you answer same question? What actions would you take or what policies would you endorse to address homelessness?
Yes, thank you. I think Mr. Steele answered it pretty eloquently. I was thinking similarly. Homelessness in our district, it's very complex, but in order to get people out of homelessness, and you can say they don't want to, what they really need is a safe space where people can meet them where they're at. And I mean case workers, where they gain trust over time, where they have transportation services to get them to the facilities that they need for help when and if they accept it. And for instance, King County has been looking at I said Houston the other day, but it's Austin has a pretty decent program happening right now where they've started 600 tiny homes. And over time, once those people are safe in a space where they can lock the door and the people know where, because it's hard to find people that are living in tents, but to get them the services that they need to help get them back on track in the best way possible to have a decent way of living. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett, welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. The question we're answering right now is, what actions would you take or what policies would you endorse, if any, to address homelessness in your district?
All right, trying to navigate my phone here. Can you ask the question again? I was trying to get unmuted. I apologize. We end up have to log back in on my phone here, so I'm a little miscombobulated here.
We'll give you a minute.
Okay, I'm ready. Go ahead.
Ready. What actions would you take or what policies would you endorse, if any, to address homelessness in your district?
Well, this is something that is it needs to be very proactive within the state, but also around the state within our smaller communities, whether it's municipalities and counties. We need to work together. As past sheriff of Chelan County, we put together a mental health co-response team. So we could brought in and we hired the county designated mental health professional to go in and work directly with our sheriff deputies to identify people in crisis, and then to find short-term solutions for their crisis, but then also long-term solutions that would help them down the road. So we need to be proactive as a community. We need to put some programs in place, and if anything else, make it so we have the ability to go, because what happens is it becomes a nuisance call, and that's not what we want. We need to give them long-term solutions, keep them out of the criminal justice system. I'd like to bring them back our mental health courts and work with our courts to find solutions to keep them out of the criminal justice system.
Thank you. Okay, we were going to start with Ms. Koellen. What policy and funding changes would you make, if any, related to public school education, and how would these changes improve the quality of education?
Thank you. So I'm not sure of the exact what they call it, but early start. So 3 to 4 year olds getting in before kindergarten, getting not daycare, but school care to get them started, and moving forward with that all the way through to running start in college. Thank you. Oh, could I add also, a lot of times the smartest kids get the most attention, and the most troubled kids get the most attention, and the children in the middle, they're like, oh, you're okay, and they don't get enough attention. So I would like to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett, same question.
Okay, yes. So education, I think one of the big things we're looking at, I really support early child learning. And we had a saying in law enforcement said, pay me now or pay me later. So we'd like to really go in for those individuals that have the less ability to be sufficiently led and guided in a proper education at a young age. I think the funding, what we're hearing from the different educators and superintendents around the state, and either in policymakers, is they believe that the funding is actually quite sufficient, but we need to be looking at the distribution. Is it even, and is it equitable? As we talk to different educators and superintendents. The other thing that I'm hearing from them is the disability ratio for teaching those children with disabilities K through 12. They take up a certain percentage, and there's only a certain amount of funding. And I think it's at 15 or 16% in the state. And we need to look at making sure we have adequate funding for that.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Mr. Steele, same question.
Yes, thank you. So I would agree. I think we need to focus on special education. As someone who has sponsored removing the cap for special education and fully funding special education in Washington State. I'm going to continue to advocate for that. I think that's super important. And as I meet with districts across Washington, both in my former role as the ranking member of the K-12 education and currently as a member of the committee, I was just in Walla Walla for the last 2 days. And we, in fact, visited special education facilities along with early learning and ECAP, Head Start and ECAP facilities. And those facilities definitely need to continue to be well funded. The way that we do it in the House is slightly different, though, for folks who don't know. We do separate the responsibilities. So there's a K-12 education committee, then there's an early learning committee, and they should be joined, in my personal opinion, because it is a continuum, and we need to make sure that those kids get a good start and are entering our K-12 system prepared and ready to learn. I would also suggest that in my work in the capital budget, we need to continue to look at school construction assistance and really look at how we're facilitating development construction of new facilities across Washington in both rural and urban districts.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Scott?
Yes, Nadine, not only do the schools need to be funded appropriately, and then that funding also needs to be allocated appropriately, but we need to empower our school districts, each individual school district, to make some of their own decisions for what's best for the kids within their school and the kids within their district. And the state has taken a lot of the choices away from that. We've heard from the other candidates about early child learning. My wife actually works in a pre-K in a public school here, and she works in the ECAP program with sometimes with special needs kids or on the spectrum kids, a lot of behavioral issues. And these other candidates are absolutely right. You need to focus on those because huge differences are made for these kids. A lot of these kids are made when they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, and we do need to fund that. But my bottom line is we need to allow the school districts to make choices to do what's best for the students in their own schools.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, we're going to start this next question with you. What environmental legislation or regulation, if any, is a priority for you?
Well, the environmental issue that you're talking a huge scope when you bring up that question. I think we can all agree that we want clean skies, clean air, clean water, that type of thing. But I think people differ on what that means. Some people take that environmental issue and try to use it to block other people from developing land or that type of thing. And being an environmentalist, you should be wanting to partner with people and private enterprises to help them to do things as cleanly and as safely as the best they can, not just blocking them and locking them in litigation, especially when you're talking on like housing development, because we keep talking about affordability here, but all those regulations keep pushing up the cost of housing. So, within the environmental issue, I think that we have a lot of tweaking to do within the state, and we've been taking this big axe approach instead of a small, broad brush that we should be using.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Burnett, same question. Your thoughts?
Right. I know this is a tough one, and I know I'm not nearly as educated as I will be soon, but I think some of the things that we need to look at is the proper taking care of our public lands. So DNR, forestry, our wildfires, and prevention. A lot of that has an environmental impact both during the fire and afterwards. Water rights, I know, is a big one. Being able to manage for development on the private property piece, but also making sure that's managed properly for our agriculture industry. And again, all of that going on to different things for private development.
Thank you. Ms. Koellen, your thoughts?
Yes. So I am all for keeping the Climate Commitment Act 2117. I worry about drought. I worry about floods. I worry about wildfires. As you know, it's getting hotter and hotter. They just told me last week just the other day, when I was in Wenatchee, it's supposed to be 80s, which is unusual for that time of year. And that's becoming more and more common. And so we really need to be very thoughtful for the future, because honestly, most of us are going to be dead but we need to think about the future of our children and keeping this planet as safe as we can for them and not back down off of that based on money. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Koellen, we'd like to start with you on this next question. Is there an idea or a position from a political party different from your own that you think is worth considering? Please tell us about it.
Please repeat the question.
Is there an idea or a position from a political party different from your own that you think is worth considering?
Sure. So I think it is worth considering taking a look at taxes and trying to lower them. I think it is worth looking at. That's a hard one.
It's intriguing.
So I am open to listening and learning from my opposition. I am always open to learning and changing my mind. I'm never stuck in my ways 100% of the time. I am able to adapt, especially when it makes sense, and I don't get stuck in my belief system, so to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett, same question.
Thank you, Nadine. I've got several here. Obviously, the environmental piece of this, I think, is a big divide between the Democrats and the Republicans across the aisle. But I think as good stewards, we want to consider all aspects of how do we move forward and manage the health and the future of Washington State. And it's not just about Washington State, it's about the United States of America and the earth that we live on. So I think that's important that we hear all of the different factors in that. I'd also like to do some work on the foster care system. And I don't have anything specific, but I know that we have some different ideology. But the backing and the main principle behind it is that we take better care of those that have been abused and abandoned and make sure that they're getting proper care all the way through into their adult years. Also, labor and industries. How do we get our people back to work quicker and not waste a lot of our money for our government and private businesses as well?
Thank you. And Mr. Steele.
Thank you, Nadine. Since I missed I didn't get a chance to answer the last question, I'm going to combine these two. And so I would just point to my work on the capital budget. It's the truly only bipartisan budget that happens in the legislature. It usually passes out of both chambers with 100% support from both parties. That budget takes a lot of bipartisan work, and we have to support the ideas of each other. We have to support the ideas of both the majority party and the minority party in order to accomplish a bipartisan budget that requires both Republicans and Democrats to vote for it. And through that work, we've accomplished great things. I'm very proud of the work that we've done to replenish salmon populations for our resident orcas. I'm very proud of the work that we've done to establish our conservation commissions and the voluntary stewardship programs. Those are things that we've worked on together as both Republicans and Democrats. And so I have a record of working with folks across the aisle to pass a truly bipartisan budget. So I'm always looking for ways that we work together and solve problems. And that is truly the honor that I have in serving in the capital budget. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Steele, I'm sorry. Did I not give you an opportunity to answer the environmental legislation question?
I think I hit it, but no, it's fine, Nadine. These are fast-moving forums. I get it. I'm fine. I don't need to waste time for anybody else. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Let me get back. Mr. Scott.
Yes, Nadine, I think there's a lot of environmental issues that the Democrat Party puts out there that are actually some pretty good proposals. Unfortunately, they tend to take a kind of a draconian look, and they oftentimes either use those environmental laws to either block people from doing things or to force people from doing things. But I think there's a lot of good that's happening underneath there too. We do have very clean air and clean water, And if you've ever traveled around the world to some of these countries that are much dirtier, and you see the smog and you see just dirt and gunk, you realize how good we have it here and how good we've done things here. And it's taken a long time to get to some of these spots. And we need to keep moving forward with that. But we need to do it in a way that benefits people instead of just hammers on people. We want to give people choices, not take choices away.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, we'd like to stick with you for the next question. How satisfied were you with the most recent Washington State redistricting process? And are there any changes to the process that you would recommend?
Well, from the districts over here on the east side of the state, that redistricting process didn't favor us. It redrew our districts in ways, and it felt like we didn't have input. And yes, I understand that a deadline was missed, but it was missed by an hour or two one night, and then all of the hard work that committee had done had literally just gotten thrown out, and then it was just told, we were dictated to how the districts were going to be, and that was a bit unfair. We would have liked to have continued working with that group and that committee and actually getting our proposals out there instead of how the redistricting ended up, where it ended up that all the hard work and all the collaboration was thrown out the window. That was not right, in my opinion, and I'd like to see that changed and improved next time around.
Thank you for your thoughts. Mr. Steele, same question.
Thank you, Nadine. As folks know, we as Washingtonians take our redistricting process very seriously. And in fact, we've established a redistricting commission in order to avoid any faint appearance of gerrymandering. And unfortunately, as we've gone through this second round, so Mr. Scott was referring to that first round of redistricting, which was a natural progression. We did indeed have some issues with the redistricting commission, but in this second round of redistricting, where we picked up more of the west side, that was brought on by a lawsuit out of California that one federal judge was able to weigh in on and make a decision, and really flies in the face of what we try to accomplish here in Washington, which is a process that is transparent, a process that does not create a partisan approach to these districts, and one person making a decision out of a state that is not even, involved in Washington politics really is concerning to me. And so I do think we need to take a look at that and make sure that Washingtonians are the ones that are making the decisions on these districts and how they're represented.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett, same question.
Right. I'll probably just echo a little bit what Mr. Steele said. There was a little bit on keeping it within the commission and not in the hands of the courts. I think one of the unfortunate things that I think was the biggest piece, which obviously got me into the race, was that it happened during the 2024 election process, which actually drew Senator Hawkins out of his area. And I think that was very, very untimely for that to be redrawn when those candidates had already started their campaign process. I think negative circumstances and what we would say unfair situations, I've always seen them as actually great opportunities to move forward and take opportunities. So rather than focusing on what I don't have control over, I'm going to actually focus forward to the District 12 and the opportunity that we have to represent in all three counties. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Koellen, same question.
So the redistricting, which happened in April, was of shock to me as well. I was in the 5th district. I was very happy being in the 5th district, but then this opportunity came about, and I felt like it was 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats that had to split up. They have to have like 167,000 population, and I think they did the best they could to make it half Republican, half Democrat. And when I look at the numbers right now, it does appear to be that way. So I did think it did happen quickly, but it's going to be very interesting. And I would not be running right now if it had not been redistricted. And I think I'm the first Democrat, maybe not the first, maybe the second in like 50 years to run in a highly GOP area, but also my area. And It's interesting. You're getting a real look at real Washington. And I think that is
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is going to be a little different right now. Timer, please remember that we're going to allow 30 seconds for each of these initiatives, so please make a change. There are 3 initiatives that are up for consideration, and you each will have a quick 30 seconds to respond regarding each initiative, and we will take them one at a time. So the time's been changed to 30 seconds. Ms. Koellen, you're first. Do you support or oppose Initiative 2109, which would repeal the capital gains excise tax imposed on long-term capital assets of individuals with capital gains over $250,000? 30 seconds, please explain.
So I do support that initiative. So I will be voting no on appealing that. I believe if you make over $250,000, paying capital gains seems fair to me. So I will be supporting that and not appealing it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Burnett, Initiative 2109, support or oppose?
Absolutely. Let me make the quick comment too that I really support the initiative process to be able to put that in the hands of the people to decide. I'm going to support this long-term capital gains as far as the repeal piece of it, and it's because it's a regressive tax program. They're increasing the tax on the wealthy, but they're not adjusting it to the lower or middle income, which really is what they're saying needs to make a difference. So I think that those things should be put in place if they were to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, Initiative 2109.
Thank you, Nadine. I too support the initiative process, and the legislature kicked these 3 initiatives out to the people for a vote this November. Overwhelmingly, the people of our state have said, regardless of partisan politics, regardless of the party they affiliate with, they do not want an income tax at the state level. Overwhelmingly, as a matter of fact, and that's exactly what this is. The way that the bill reads and the way that it was proposed creates an income tax for Washingtonians. And we said, again, as a state, we oppose this. And so I am siding with 80% or more of the state of Washington that said no, and I will be hoping to repeal this initiative in November.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, the capital gains excise tax is a income tax by any other name, and income taxes are not allowed under the state constitution. It's been voted down many times over the years. But as what you're seeing this tax is actually pushing out wealthy businessmen that are in the state creating jobs. When we saw Jeff Bezos leave, I believe the state estimated they lost $59 million they thought they were going to collect from him. And so they've forced people out that are going to help create jobs, and that's a negative to the state.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Scott, we're going to start with you. Do you support or oppose Initiative 2117, which would prohibit carbon tax credit trading and repeal provisions of the 2012 Washington Climate Commitment Act, the CCA? You have 30 seconds.
Well, is what happened with that carbon tax is that increased the cost, especially of gasoline, and that really affects low-income people that are disproportionately affecting that and paying for that. And so that's a big problem. And if the gas payers, the oil companies are paying for that, why didn't this happen through a gasoline tax? Because gasoline taxes are spent on roads and transportation. This was just simply a way to grab money to be spent, a big pile of money to be spent any way the state legislature chooses to spend it.
Thank you. Mr. Steele.
Thanks, Nadine. As someone whose family depends on a clean air, clean water, and clean earth for their livelihood, being a good steward of the environment is super important. But let's call a spade a spade. This initiative, the Climate Commitment Act, is simply an opportunity for big corporations to pay to pollute. They can buy tax credits so they can continue to pollute into our atmosphere, continue to emit, and that's all this is. So I think we have to repeal it by voting yes on this initiative in November, so that we hold these corporations accountable and don't simply allow them to pollute, thereby giving the paycheck to the legislature and making it harder on the most vulnerable among us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Koellen, Initiative 2117, support or oppose?
I will not be repealing it, and I could be wrong and I need more research, but I think the Climate Commitment Act is very needed. I don't think we should get rid of it. I don't think I want to worry about big businesses moving away. I think at the moment, Washington State has amazing businesses. People are moving all over the country to be here, to be with our businesses. Part of our housing problem is because of so many people and our great businesses. And I think we can be conscientious
Thank you.
of our climate.
And we'll stay with you now, our final initiative. Ms. Koellen, do you support or oppose Initiative 2124, which allows all employees and self-employed individuals to opt out of the long-term services insurance program? 30 seconds.
I will not repeal 2124. I think we need to have this long-term care for our people. It's much like Social Security. It's very important, and getting rid of it would be put people in dire needs.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett.
I'm going to answer 2117 first. I believe that it does need to be repealed. And I would take 60 seconds to do so, but I would just echo many of the things that Mr. Steele and Daniel Scott said as well. I don't think this is really going to solve the issue at hand. It's a tax. 2124 long-term care. I really think that we need to allow the people to choose. We're taking away people's choice to how they're going to choose how they live their lives out and not have a state program in place. I just don't think this is going to offer up what people have the right to do. And again, I think we're putting this back on the state and not the individuals.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett, I apologize for skipping you. Thank you so much. Mr. Steele, 2124.
Yes, thank you, Nadine. I think it's important to talk about the actual benefit that people would be receiving. This is only $36,000 in total payout. And also it affects the people who are least able to afford it. This is a direct payroll tax. It's coming out of your paycheck. People should be able to choose whether or not they have the ability or the money to be able to contribute to this payroll tax. The state should not be heavy-handed in this. I mean, if you think about $36,000 and how far that actually goes in long-term care, it's nothing. And so if the state is actually going to create a safety net, we should do it. We should step up and put our money where our mouth is rather than do it in this form.
Thank you. And Mr. Scott.
Yes, I'd like to echo what Mike said there, that this really is not a long-term care insurance at a maximum cap of 36,000. That is maybe a year at most for what it's set up for. I think that it's a good idea, but it needs a major overhaul as it's written. And if you're going to tax people, you need to be fair about it, fair about how much you're collecting, and fair about how much the collection is getting you. Just similar to a European system many countries do some similar stuff there.
Thank you. I appreciate your efforts to stay within those time limits. At this time, we offer candidates the opportunity to ask a question of their opponent. The question must be related to an answer that was given during this forum. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask their question. Timer, please note. And each opponent will have 60 seconds to respond, should you choose to participate. We're going to start with Mr. Scott and Mr. Steele. Mr. Scott, do you have a question that you would like to ask Mr. Steele on something that you heard tonight?
Yeah, Mike, you brought up that you're ranking Republican on several committees, and with the Republicans in the a minority, almost a super minority in Olympia, how much value is there being a ranking Republican versus a new Republican coming in?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Actually, there's tremendous value because relationships matter in Olympia, and whether you're the majority or the minority, having the ranking member and the chair work together is crucial for a good outcome in public policy. And so that member of the Republican Party and that member of the Democratic Party must communicate, and they do. But you also have to be willing to work together, and you have to work together in good faith. Otherwise, that relationship that exists between the chair and the ranking member is difficult. But I pride myself on my ability to work across the aisle and work with other folks and and get things done for the good of Washington State. And what you'll see, in the legislature time and time again is that we pass overwhelmingly policies at 98 to 0 or 96 to 2. It's majority of our policy work is done in a very bipartisan and almost unanimous way. There are just a few contentious issues where we really have to lean in and work with one another to solve the problems that are affecting Washingtonians. And so that ranking member relationship and that chair relationship really do matter, and it's crucial.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Steele, do you have a question that you would like to ask Mr. Scott about something you heard this evening?
Thank you, Nadine. I don't have a question. I would just like to thank him for his willingness to run for public office.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go to Mr. Burnett and Ms. Koellen. Mr. Burnett, do you have a question that you would like to ask Ms. Koellen on a response this evening?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Koellen has said in numerous occasions to me that she doesn't know how I manage my time to get to so many places during this campaign across this large district. As a person that's in the position I am to work remotely part-time with the green light from my employer, how do you plan on managing your time to do this as a state representative, both during session and outside of session when you're currently full-time employed?
Okay, Ms. Koellen?
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. First of all, you and I have never had that discussion, and I have never said that to you. As if we were friends and we had discussed it, everybody knows that when I'm elected that I plan on retiring from nursing. I'm going to try to hang on to city council, but if I'm not effective there, I will let that one go as well, and I will focus full-time on legislation. I do that with everything, but I did not say that to you.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Koellen, do you have a question that you'd like to ask Mr. Burnett on something that you heard tonight?
I guess it would be when we were speaking about the homelessness in our district, and he spoke to mental health through the sheriff's department, which is amazing, but it didn't really hit on helping people living in encampments, homelessness, and getting them off the streets.
Mr. Burnett, would you like to respond?
I would respond, I'm not sure I understand her question.
Could you clarify, Ms. Koellen?
When I listened to the question about homelessness in our district, I guess I'm wondering, aside from not arresting them and having mental health care for police, how would you help the people living on the streets to not live on the streets?
Okay.
And within the co-response team that we did, we would take the mental health professionals with the deputies as they worked a security piece of this, and they would try to plug those people in crisis into the available resources and programs that we had, either locally, regionally, or statewide, to find them short-term solutions that would get them plugged in to get them long-term recovery solutions to get them productive and off the street and living in a more healthy environment. And then obviously that's a great impact to your community as well. You're obviously going to have to work with your local and regional assets and partners to manage that, to make sure that you have people in place and you know where those resources are, whether that's the municipalities and or the counties as well.
Thank you. And this is our final question of the evening. And you will have 60 seconds to answer. One of my favorites. We'd like to start with Mr. Scott. Please tell us something about your life experience that might surprise or intrigue voters.
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I've done a lot of things and been a lot of places in my life. I've been very fortunate. I think a few things come to mind. One that might surprise people is I was a page in Olympia when I was in 8th grade for Senator George Sellers. That was a long time ago. I'm dating myself. Another interesting tidbit is I was a Rotary Youth Exchange student when I was in high school, and I spent a year in the Philippines. And that was before the internet and cell phones and stuff. My daughter was just a Rotary Exchange student last year, and she'd call and text all the time. It was a totally different experience, different world. World's changing. And I think something else that most people don't know about me that I haven't even talked about in the campaign, but my wife is Asian, and so we're a mixed race family with mixed race children. We've been married almost 27 years, and it's been great.
Thank you. Mr. Steele, I'm going to make sure I get you this time.
Thanks, Nadine. I actually am going to use a Rotary example as well. I was the youngest president ever elected to my Rotary Club, and I've really enjoyed the work that we're doing both locally and internationally. But one of the projects I'm most proud of during my time as president is helping to build a couple of schools in Nairobi in Kenya, and some of the rural areas of Kenya as well. And I've had the opportunity to visit those schools on several occasions, and still involved in getting school books and textbooks to those students on a regular basis, and keep in touch with a lot of the students that we sponsor. And it's great to watch their progress. It's also great to go over there when I get the opportunity and to do more projects, providing medical screening, providing clean water projects, and trying to help in those areas. But very proud of the work we're doing here locally as well in building ramps for seniors. And those are just things that I like to do in my off time, and serve on a number of local boards as well that are involved in nonprofit work. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Burnett, I'm going to get you also.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, thank you very much again. I think there's a couple things here, and we're going to wrap them together. And it's going to be through our work that we've been involved with nonprofits and personally our volunteering our time for foster kids that have been abused and neglected, ages 6 to 12. And also on the human trafficking side, specific to sex trafficking, that we've been involved and networked with different groups. I have an adopted daughter that is a survivor from sex trafficking, and the work that she's trying to give back and do, that we're trying to implement greater education and information out there, specifically too, because if you look at people that are human trafficked for the sex trafficking industry, we believe that some of our foster kids are some of the most vulnerable, and the implications from that are long life lasting just aren't right. And we want to make sure that they have the proper aftercare moving forward, and also eliminate any other kids coming into that trafficking piece.
Thank you so much, Mr. Burnett. Ms. Koellen, something that might surprise or intrigue voters.
So I guess I'll say I was a single mom, and I put myself through school and worked while raising 2 little girls. And it was very empowering to do that and to get my degree and keep our family together and pay the bills and keep it going. And it was hard because we didn't have a lot of support. Daycare, as you know, is completely difficult, very expensive, and the hours aren't great for like a nursing student who might have to work an evening shift at Children's Hospital to get their schooling done. But it was empowering, and I hope to inspire women that they can get a seat at the table, that they should try to get a seat at the table and make a difference, and have some representation of women in government and all aspects of business and life. Thank you.
Thank you. The League thanks these candidates for joining us and for running for office. We encourage you to explore additional information about these and all candidates. Recordings of this forum and others, including forums held during the primary election, are available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website and on our YouTube and podcast channels. Find links at lwvsnoho.org. Vote411.org, sponsored by the League, is another good source of information. The Snohomish County voter pamphlet will be mailed starting October 7th. Ballots will be mailed starting October 17th, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Please be a voter. Thank you to our League Candidate Forum team and the Candidate Forum Coalition. Special thanks to Dave Moon and the Sultan School students at turkpride.tv who made this live stream possible. And of course, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our candidate forum.